This video is going to showcase the hero reworks in my workshop mode Oobwatch. For more detailed information, check out the forum post, which is going to be linked in the description. So I'm going to start with the new class categories. So instead of tank, damage, and healer, you now have brawler, which are great at fighting on the point. You have flanker, which specialize in mobility and getting behind the enemy. You have flyers, which have a high amount of air control, and you have snipers, which excel at dealing damage at range. So it doesn't necessarily mean like Widowmaker, it just means that they'd rather sit back and deal damage. Next there is some all hero changes, which are entirely to do with healing. So when you're out of combat for 5 seconds, you regenerate health. So this means that you haven't taken or dealt damage for 5 seconds, which means you're less reliant on healers on your team. For 5 seconds after taking damage, you decrease healing you receive by 50%. So it means in combat healing is halved. When you get an elimination, you get 30 health, and if you get the killing blow, you get another 50. So it means on eliminations you get 30 health, on killing blows you get 80. And the last change is health packs have been removed. So health in general has been increased. So rather than 200 health being the base for most characters, it's 300 health.
Bring me another!
So the primary attack has 200% damage and 200% knockback. So it's gonna knock around like something like this. It two-shots most heroes. The fire strike has a decreased cooldown. See, it's only 4 seconds now, and it has increased movement speed, projectile speed I mean. And one of Reinhardt's passives is after dealing damage, he gains a short speed boost for a few seconds. So this includes Fire Strike, and it works for charge as well. So you get increased charge speed. Also, charge has decreased cooldown. So there are no shields in Oobwatch. So if I changed up the right click, so instead of holding a shield, it does a different sort of charge. You gain height, and where you land, it deals damage. So if I do that again, you see a little shockwave. You can also swing while landing for pretty high damage. Literally like 1 HP. You can also do this during a charge. If you right click, slam. Yeah, so the only other thing to mention is that the ult is only generated through combat, so you won't passively generate ult with Reinhardt.
You chicken.
So Roadhog is a bit of a weird one. He has high damage and only 2 shots, so it's very rewarding to hit the shots and very punishing to miss them. The chain hook cooldown is slightly decreased, and the same with Take a Breather. Except Take a Breather has a bit of a different functionality. So if you want to damage, Take a Breather now only heals a small amount, but it heals constantly until you reach 350. So if you keep damaging me, keeping me low health, and then don't let me die though. So you can see my health keeps increasing, and then damage me again. I just leave it. See, I'm still increasing health, and it keeps increasing until you reach over 350. And it also has the damage resist as per normal. So one passive ability Roadhog has is the lower your health is, the more damage you deal. So this is why the Take a Breather is so good for keeping you consistently at low health and not just putting it all the way up to full. The last ability Roadhog has is when your portrait is on fire, you enter Road Rage. So let me just get a few kills. You basically appear like you're on fire. You don't see, just like this. You don't take any burn damage, but you do deal burn damage. So anyone you hit has a small burn debuff. So He's running around on fire. This isn't actually that much damage in the long run, but what it means is you can do some poke damage from far away, which can be pretty useful. You also gain additional movement speed, and your Take a Breather gives you 3 times the amount of health as normal. So the ult is only generated through combat and not generated passively, and also has self knockback. So you can't go forward very fast, but you can go backwards very fast, especially if you spam jump. So it can also be a getaway tool. But it's mainly useful for finishing people off when you've used both your shots and you really need just one more hit.
Do not disturb.
So straight away you can see that Hammond has 200 ammo instead of the normal 80, I believe. He also has 5% increased damage and 15% increased movement speed. This is to offset the fact that he can't use the grappling hook and also the pile driver. His ball mode is now a defensive ability, but we'll get onto that in a bit. The right click is now, it fires a burst of incendiary ammo. So it will set them on fire. And this can be used well in conjunction with ball mode like this. So what ball mode does is it's a defensive ability where you take 65% of this damage and allows the use of adaptive shield. So without ball mode you can't use adaptive shield. In ball mode you can. Adaptive shield has a decreased cooldown and also heals while active. So to prevent a wrecking ball from healing with its shield, you've got to burn the shield down. Which is not very easy if he's activated when there's a lot of people around him, and he goes into ball mode for the damage resist. So if you want to damage me a bit, yeah, no, not headshots yet. A bit more. Alright, that's good. So if I go into ball mode and use a shield, you can see I'm starting to regen. So you can be very, very tanky with Wrecking Ball. His weakness though is getting headshot. So if you headshot me, it stuns me for 2 seconds and sets me on fire for 3 seconds. So it may not seem like much, but a 2-second stun is pretty devastating. So if you want to do it again. There you go. The ult is only generated passively, has a 200% duration, and also a lot higher knockback. So it can be a bit more deadly now because it can just knock people around into more mines.
Why do you struggle?
So let's start with Symmetra's primary attack, which is now a hybrid between the old lock-on beam and the new pinpoint beam. So about half the damage is in the pinpoint beam and half of it is in the lock-on beam. If you're not very good at hitting the tracking, you're still getting about half the damage, so it's a bit more forgiving. The secondary fire has 20% increased projectile speed, but it does about half the damage. So it's more of a utility tool because it also increases your movement speed while you use it, and also gives you a little bit of healing. So if you damage me to about half, there you go. So you can use it as an escape to go fast and heal, or you can use it as a tool to catch up to someone and then use your primary to finish them off. The turrets move a lot slower and they do about half the damage. And considering the increased health of nearly every hero, it really kind of is insignificant instead, except for the healing. I mean, the slowing. So they do still have the slow, but they do have half the damage as normal. The teleporter has decreased cooldown. See, it's only 4 or 5 seconds there. And the ult is disabled.
You won't be disappointed.
So Brigitte has 15% increased damage, and she, like Reinhardt, gains a small speed boost after dealing damage. So that also includes the whip shot, just like Reinhardt includes the fire strike. And knowing Brigitte, this also sets off her passive healing. So she's all about getting those hits in. It does get a bit hard to get close range because she has no barrier shield, but instead her right click propels her forward to give her a slight speed boost. This lets her get up to certain places, do some little parkour, which is pretty damn important for a melee hero. Whip shot has decreased cooldown and knockback, so you see it doesn't knock him back very far, and you can shift 1, 2, 3, 4, shift. There you go. So you can do it every 4 swings. Repair pack has decreased cooldown and also gives you self-healing. So if you damage the Ashe a bit, almost says ass. So see the cooldown's a bit lower, and it also provides some self-healing. So if you damage me and the Ashe a bit more. There you go. See, it's giving me some self-healing. It's not that much, but it does add up quite a lot when you're using repair packs in the fight. The last thing about Brigitte is her ult is only generated through combat, a bit like Reinhardt. So there's no more passive generation. But her ult is very, very strong, considering it gives it a speed boost that stacks with her speed boost gained on dealing damage.
The state of you.
I'll start off by saying Moira has lost her orbs, and there are some very good reasons for that, and I won't go into them right now. But I'll probably put them on the forum post soon. Instead, the attacks deal lingering damage, so after you finish attacking someone, it still ticks away, like poison, and that happens even while you are attacking them. So it increases their damage by quite a bit. As well as that, you have 10% increased movement speed, which is very nice considering Moira's hitbox is hard enough to hit as it is, so you can dodge around a bit easier. Fade cooldown is also decreased a bit, so you have a bit more survivability of that too, which offsets the very low health. You also receive 15% increased healing compared to other heroes, which is very nice considering both your attacks do self-healing. So you know about the right-click heal as per normal, but left-click now also heals you, but for half the rate that it would heal an ally. So if you damage me and Ashe, don't kill us, please, please. So see the other heal, and now passive regen will kick in because we haven't taken damage or dealt damage in a while. The left click, while you're holding space, it will propel you. So you can use this for getting to high ledges, a bit like this, or you can use it to juke and dodge attacks a bit. It has some nice uses. The meter, the biotic energy, as it's called, it has the meter's smaller, but it charges a lot quicker. You can see, which means you've got to alternate between left and right a bit more. Makes it a bit more fluid. Lastly, the ult is only charged through combat, and it has increased healing, but it also does decent damage. So if you damage the Ashe a bit, there you go. So you see how quickly it fills up the health bar, considering Ashe's 300 health.
Working as intended.
Torbjorn is now a melee hero, so he has no rivet gun, and he just has his hammer and his turret. Well, and also his overload, but yeah. Melee attacks heal you a small amount and increase your dwarf meter, which is in the top left. His entire kit is built around this dwarf meter. So the way dwarf meter works is the higher the number, the more damage you deal, which includes both you and your turret. The dwarf meter decreases over time in like a linear decay, so it just constantly decreases. And when it's over 100, it decreases at 5 times the normal rate. When the dwarf meter is over 100, however, it unlocks your ultimate, which decreases dwarf meter by 30 if you use it. So let me build it up. You can see my damage is increasing quite a bit as the dwarf meter goes up. I should probably clarify that the dwarf meter only increases from melee hits and not anything to do with the turret. So now if so you see how quickly it's decreasing because it's over 100. If I use the ultimate, it decreases by 30. So next thing to think about is the Overload, which has a pretty drastically decreased cooldown and duration. What this does is it gives you the 160 temporary armor during the duration, and it also constantly makes you immune to CCs during the duration, and also it makes you unkillable, so it will bring you down to 1 health at the lowest. The speed boost you get during this is linked to your dwarf meter, so the higher your dwarf meter, the faster you'll go. So it becomes easier to build up the dwarf meter as you get more dwarf meter, so it's almost like a snowball effect sometimes. The last thing about Torbjorn is when you right click, it does a little hop and then you stomp the ground and propel yourself up. So it's just some nice mobility. You can also use it with Overload to get some nice height and speed. Actually, there's one more thing. The turret, because its damage increases with the dwarf meter, it can do some serious damage, and its cooldown is increased by quite a bit because of that. So you've got to be pretty careful about where you use your turret, where you place it.
Watch and learn.
McCree is very skill based now. It's all about hitting those headshots. So his fire rate has decreased drastically. So that's the fastest you can fire. His damage is increased by 40%. So you can see there, it would be 3 shots to kill. That would be 4 shots for body shots. But where McCree's strength really comes in is hitting those headshots. So he has very high headshot damage. He can one-shot most heroes with a headshot at close range, and where it starts to fall off is about this range, in which case it will no longer one-shot the 300 health ones. If you've noticed as well, in the bottom right, hitting a headshot unlocks the flashbang for 5 seconds. And you'll notice that hitting the second headshot didn't reset the flashbang, but it instead extended the cooldown of the flashbang by 5 seconds. So it stops the headshot, flashbang, because that gets pretty obnoxious. Next thing about McCree is the combat roll. Has decreased cooldown and provides a nice speed boost for a very short time after. It also provides a little damage resist during it.
I am Mother Russia.
Zarya has no bubbles. That's kind of a key identity in the main game, and now she doesn't have them, so bear with me. The primary attack does a lot higher damage. You see how quickly she melts people. The primary attack there. And that's her main source damage. You see she's got double the ammo as well that she would have before. Her right click, however, is the rate of fire decreased. So this is the fastest you can fire. And it's more of a utility now. So it's got you see the projectile speed and gravity I made it so goes faster and dips less quickly. But the knockback is increased by quite a bit, as you can see there. This includes self-knockback as well, as you can get some nice rocket jumps. So it's very much a utility now, so you can knock them around and then attack them with your left click while they're discombobulated. Or you can rush in and then get them when they're not expecting it. The other ability she has is while you're on the ground, if you press shift, it rushes you forwards, like this. It's a very low cooldown, so you can do it pretty often. You can do it while attacking. You can also do it as part of a rocket jump sort of thing. As long as you are on the ground when you use it, it'll work. Another thing you can do is, if you press space directly after, you can get some nice height, so a bit like that. So that concludes the brawlers. One last thing is the ult is generated passively. and it has decreased projectile gravity. So watch out when you're firing her ult, because it will probably go further than you expect. Anyway, so that concludes the brawlers. And next up will be the flankers.
Natural selection.
Winston's changes are pretty simple, but they're pretty drastic. So to start off, his clip is only 25. So that's how much you can shoot before having to reload. You can see he has a lot higher damage though. This also includes his slam from when he does his leap. He also has 5% increased base movement, and his health is only a bit higher than the normal, which is 300. So one of his first things you'll notice is when you're in the air, you hold crouch and you'll fall a lot faster. This would help hit your leaps, which is a huge part of your damage. You see, it does a lot of damage. The jump pack cooldown is actually decreased as well, which is nice. So the barrier projectile, the projected barrier is disabled, and instead you have a backwards leap, which doesn't deal damage when you land, but it's on the same cooldown as your leap. It doesn't share the cooldown, it just is the same number. So what you can do is you can leap in, do damage, and then leap out. That's one way to use it. Or you can use it to extend your leap, where you turn around, an extra big leap there. A bit like that. So there's a few ways you can use it, but I just know that it sends you backwards instead. So your ult is only generated through combat, and it doesn't last very long at all. And you don't do much damage in it, but it basically resets your health, which is very, very nice if you're going to dive someone and live.
Go and sit down.
Doomfist has had his mobility increased and his lethality decreased. So his punch has gone up to 6-second cooldown, and the knockback has been decreased, so it's harder to knock people into walls. And on the other hand, the slam and the uppercut have the cooldown decreased to about 3 seconds. His overall damage is technically higher at 15% increased damage, and he has a 5% movement speed bonus. But if you look at his range tag, this is the fire rate of the primary fire. That's because it's now a mobility ability. So if you're in the air and you shoot, you get propelled in that direction. Which can be very nice for just getting height for a slam, even just off that. But there's loads of combos you can do with this. The next core ability Doomfist has is when you do an uppercut, you gain a speed boost until you hit the floor. So this actually works for your punch as well. So look how far you can go. And lastly, if you drop below 50 health, you get your ultimate. So if you want to damage me a bit. And the ultimate does no damage but has large knockback. And if you go back over 100 health, then you lose the ultimate. So it's very much an escape now. Or trying to knock people off the map, if anything.
Simple.
Genji has the lowest health out of everyone, and he ties with Tracer at 200. He has 25% increased movement speed and 10% increased damage, and his projectile speed is quite a bit higher. He only has 15 in the clip though. His mobility has been increased by quite a bit, and with not even just the movement speed. So his dash is on a lower cooldown. When he uses his deflect, he moves a lot faster, and he also gets a speed boost during wall climb, which you can actually use on some ledges to get some height. So, a bit like that. Getting a killing blow with Genji gives you his ultimate, and that's the only way to get it. And the ultimate only lasts for 2 hits. And you can only Symmetra's only 250 health, but if most characters are 300, and that won't, 2 slashes and the dash won't kill them. But as you saw, I killed her with the ultimate, and it got me another ultimate. So you can chain ultimates pretty nicely with Genji.
What are you looking at?
So let's start with Reaper's abilities. The Shadow Step has a decreased cooldown. The Reposition has no cooldown. And he has a new ability where when you damage someone, it creates this little recall node where you damaged them. And if you right click, it will teleport you to it and play a little sound and a little animation. And then there's a little cooldown before you can make a new spot. There you go. If you kill me, the recall location isn't reset after death, so you can basically come back from the dead. So let's say this is like at the midpoint or whatever, you can teleport back. You see my health started quite low and then I'm healing back up. That's because when you're in the spawn room as Reaper, your health goes to 75. As soon as you step out, it goes right back up. But if you teleport while in the spawn room, it heals you back a lot slower. That's to stop you just teleporting back instantly as soon as you died. You have to at least walk out the spawn room. Other than that, he only has 6 shots in the clip, and the ult is generated passively. And you can teleport during abilities like the ult, and you can even teleport during reposition, and teleport somewhere else and end back there. It's pretty crazy. Start with the basic changes for Sombra. So you can see her clip size has been decreased. It's now at 75%. She deals 15% more damage, and she has 10% more movement speed. As for new abilities, right click instead of hacking creates a beacon. You can see it there. And what this does is this heals teammates. So if you damage the Ashe a bit, oh, there you go. You see it heals her. If you damage me a bit, see it heals me as well. And it also removes CC. So if you get slept or whatever during this under the beacon, then it will cleanse that. Stealth cooldown is decreased, but it comes with some drawbacks now. So if I move backwards, you can see it creates some sparkly particles. I mean, it's not when you're moving backwards, as you can see it when it's moving backwards. So it does it at an interval of about 1.5 seconds, if I remember right. And if someone gets close to you, hack gets disabled. Not hack, stealth gets disabled. So it's decreased cooldown, but it's easier to be found out. Another thing is the translocator cooldown is decreased, and if you turn around, if you melee someone in the back, it will instantly kill them, like a backstab. Another thing to do with this is if you get a kill, you get a short speed boost, so that help you get away, which lets you use your translocator. So if you stand still there, you can use the translocator, get a kill, and run away. You don't have to rely on having a translocator active to escape.
Too slow.
Tracer has some pretty simple changes. She has 10% increased movement speed. Her weapon is now semi-auto, and she has basically 5 shots in the clip, but it's 10 because she fires 2 at a time, because she has 2 guns. Blink cooldown is decreased, and you get a short speed boost after using it. Recall disables blink for about 3 seconds after using it. Her damage is pretty crazy, but it is hard to hit because it's semi-auto, and she can't quick melee. And the ult has incredibly high damage and can only be generated passively.
You gotta believe.
So Lucio has 10% increased damage and also gains more damage at close range. He has twice the clip size, and his sound wave has increased knockback and it also knocks you back but in the opposite direction, which can be used for rocket jumps. So Lucio has even more mobility now. So you've got the wall rise and rocket jumps too. It's pretty nice. His amp it up it propels you forwards and gives you a little speed boost and a little bit of a damage boost as well. And it just trickles off. So it starts off quite intense and then it goes down to just regular. And you can use these two abilities together. You rocket jump up and then zoom. Yeah, Lucio was pretty good for mobility, and because of the damage increased after the amp it up and the close range damage boost as well, he can use this to dive people and get in the backline like that. His ult is only generated passively as well.
I'm number 1.
So let's start the basics of D.va. She has 10% increased movement speed and 20% increased damage. Defense matrix is very much nerfed, so it hardly lasts long at all. Micro missiles cooldown is decreased and is as strong as ever. And boosters have a low cooldown and knockback, but they are faster and they drain HP. This is affected by armor, so because I've got armor, it's hardly doing any drain. But once you get past the armor, they can do quite a bit of self damage. But you see how fast they are. And something important with D.va is if you hold down space, you fly. And then after a while, you start to sink, but you can just use boosters like that. And if you get me out my mech, so when you're not in your mech, you have a little damage resistance to offset the low HP, so it only brings you up a bit. It's not like a huge damage resistance. This is your normal left click, but when you right click, it fires slower and a lot more powerful. Like a lot more powerful. When you go in your spawn room, you get 100% ult, so you get your mech back. And if you press shift, it spams crouch and then jumps you up and teleports you to the nearest player. But there is no one on my team, so it just killed me. But let's say the player was in your spawn, it would teleport you to your spawn room, and then you'd get your ult back.
I don't think you understand the gravity of this situation.
Sigma has 10% increased movement speed and 70% movement gravity. So this is him being floaty. But he has a special ability where if you hold down jump or space, whatever it is for you, in the air it decreases your gravity and also gives you a little speed boost. So he has a lot of air control, which technically makes him a flyer. And you can do all sorts of fancy things like roof surfing, like this. He has 20% increased damage and 35% increased projectile speed, which means there's a lot higher range than normal. And very nice damage. He also, instead of his shield throws a right click, he has a short range primary attack. Just to make it easier to hit them at close range. His accretion has decreased cooldown and knockback, and kinetic grasp has decreased cooldown, and it also heals you while you use it. So if I let it regen just a bit. So if you damage me, don't kill me, please. Please. See, gives you a bit of healing, and out of combat it will heal you twice the amount, which is just the same for all healing. And then lastly, his ult is generated passively, and you can use it to get high up in the air and stay up like this.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
So Mei has some pretty big changes. She can no longer freeze people, either with a left click or with her ultimate. Instead it just deals damage. She has 10% base damage increase and she has 150% clip size, so she has 300 ammo instead of 200. Her cry freeze cooldown is decreased slightly, and the wall is just the same. But where the real change is primary fire lets you create like a little ice stream underneath you to walk on. Basically fly it. And the right click is the main source of your damage.
Ready for some fireworks?
So let's start off with the basic stat changes. Pharah has 10% increased damage and 20% increased projectile speed. And she has 66% clip size, which brings it from 6 to 4. She also has relatively low health. So here's some of the ability changes. So Jump Jet has a decreased cooldown, and instead of going directly up, it does it in the direction you're looking, and slightly up. So if you look directly up, it'll do directly up. If you look directly down, it'll send you directly down. If you look over here, it'll send you over here. So it allows a bit more air control. Now what you saw there was another special ability where when she falls from a high distance and lands on or near someone, it knocks them down and does a bit of damage. So let's do a Goomba Stomp. There we go. And the last ability is the Concussive Blast, which has decreased knockback and creates a sort of a mine. So it does damage, and if it doesn't hit someone and hits terrain instead, it lingers as a mine over here. So if you walk into this, there you go, it deals damage. Then I'm going to create another mine and show you that any source of damage you deal will get rid of the mine. So the mine lasts until you do any form of damage. What Pharah is great at is burst damage. So if I'd landed on her, that would have probably killed her. So she's really good at diving, but she's only got 4 in a clip, so her sustain isn't great. Like that.
The doctor is in.
So Mercy is, she consists of 2 different modes. There's her damaging mode with the pistol, and then there's a healing mode, which is her ult over here. So let's start with the pistol mode. It has only 8 in the clip, but it has 500% projectile speed, and it also does extra hit scan damage to players at close to mid range. So yeah, it's pretty damn high damage if you hit your shots, and it allows it to be a bit more forgiving with the extra hit scan damage. There you go. But the main bulk of damage is the actual pistol shot itself. There we go. So while you're in the pistol mode, if you're in the air and you press or hold crouch, you flap your wings, and you can tie this to your space to get some real height and attack from the skies. It's very powerful to have a hit scan champion in the air like this, especially against stuff like Pharah. Now a healing mode, your weapon is disabled, and what you do is when you fly around within a 10-meter radius, you heal your allies for a pretty decent amount as well, and you will see particles around them when you're healing them. And if you want to disable stop your ult, you can right click. There we go. It technically kills you and revives you. That's why it has the name in the top right. But if you damage me a bit, yeah, careful. You take increased damage in the ult mode. You can't cancel the ult until you have 230 or higher health. So if you wait to 230 or higher, there you go. Now I can cancel it. There we go. So Bastion has 5% decreased movement speed, and he has 15% passive damage resistance. His self-repair charges faster, and when you use it, it gives you a little speed boost, like this. So the reason why Bastion is a flyer is because of his ult. So he gets it relatively quickly and it generates passively, and during the ult you can hold down space to fly, and you have quite a bit of upwards air control, and you have decent damage and the only downside is while you're in the air, while you're in your ult, you take increased damage as well. But yeah, you can see at the bottom how quickly it charges. So he could be in the air about like a third of the time.
Burn it all down.
So Ashe's changes are pretty minimal actually. So she has a 5% increased damage dealt. She has 15 shots in the clip instead of 12, and the only ability changed is the coach gun, which gives a short speed boost after using it. Has a decreased cooldown, but it also has decreased enemy knockback. That's literally it for Ashe.
Simple geometry.
So Hanzo's changes are also very minor, in that his lunge cooldown is decreased and the distance is increased. His sonic arrow cooldown is decreased a bit. Storm arrow's cooldown is decreased, but you only get 3 of them, which is actually pretty damn good.
À la vie, à la mort.
So Widow also has some minor changes, in that where you look, a red dot appears, so the enemy can see where you're looking and can just be ready for that. A fully charged headshot kills anything in one shot. So it could be like a 600 health Wrecking Ball, it could be 500 health. Reinhardt, it kills anything in one hit. Grappling hook cooldown is decreased. And the last thing is the ultimate. You spawn with it and you generate it through combat pretty quickly as well. But it only lasts a very short time. And also it displays on the enemy screen the text revealed. So just in case I didn't hear.
I make my own luck.
So Anna has 10% increased damage. And she has 500% projectile speed. So it's easy to hit those no-scope left clicks, and also Sleep Dart. But Sleep Dart cooldown is decreased a bit. Another ability Anna has is you can press jump and crouch at the same time, and it throws you backwards, gives a 25% damage resist, and also a tiny little speed boost. Like that. Use it for dodging around in combat, getting out of places. If you do it from a high up area, if you teleport me to, get quite a bit of distance if you do it from a ledge.
I'm sorry, but I can't do that.
So Orisa is pretty different. She has 50% increased movement, but of course when she fires she slows down quite a bit. Her weapon is also burst fire with a lot of damage. Although you've got to bear in mind her hitbox is absolutely massive. The right click is similar, except it travels a lot faster. So it's a lot harder to use it accurately, like that. So it's best to shoot it at things like walls or floors. Fortify now stops you moving completely. So if you damage me a bit, that's good. That's good. So Fortify stops you moving completely and also heals you throughout the duration, as well as doing normal effects of decreasing damage you take and stopping CC. She has no shield and nothing to replace it as of yet, and she also has an infinite clip size, so you never have to reload. So I tried to make Junkrat a bit more skill based in that his fire is being slowed and the projectile speed and gravity has been increased, so it's less spammy and more about hitting those direct hits. And his damage has been increased to make 2-hit kills against most heroes, which is pretty crazy considering the shots can also bounce like that and bounce off walls and stuff. The concussion cooldown has been decreased and the knockback has been increased. The only difference is you can't really throw it very far, it tends to just drop. And you also can't use it for a while after shooting. So if you look in the bottom right, when I shoot, it reds out the abilities. So this is to prevent as soon as they come up close, you just shoot and then immediately throw a concussion mine and detonate it. This way you have to at least have it set up, so if they attack you, you can then shoot and detonate at the same time. So it requires setup to get a one-shot kill. The ult is generated passively and does increased damage too.
Sit down.
Soldier has increased clip size, so it's now 30, and his Helix rocket has decreased cooldown and 90% projectile speed, but it also has increased knockback, so you can use it to knock targets around, but most importantly it's used for some nice rocket jumps. The sprinting provides a 20% damage resist just while you're doing it, and the speed is increased by 10%, so it's pretty minor speed boost, but it can be noticeable. As for the Baltic field, it's more of a team-based or hiding out, like taking cover sort of ability now. So you don't just use it during combat now. So the cooldown is decreased, and while you're in the zone, you cannot fire your weapons. The exception to this is the ult, which you can use while in the field. It also provides you more healing, but it does heal teammates for the standard amount. The ult is generated in combat only, and it's generated relatively fast. Bring it back in. And the way the ult works now is it splits the damage. So whoever it is locking onto, it does half normal damage, but it damages everyone you can see by the other half. So you will end up with more damage than normal. So there we go.
Do you want a bandage for that?
So Baptiste has 5% increased damage. His healing is exactly the same. Regenerative burst cooldown is slightly decreased. His jump is a bit higher, and when you charge it up, it's a lot higher. And instead of his immortality field, he blows himself up. So he does 250 damage, 3 meters or less, and it emanates out from that to like 150 and then 150, depending on how far away from him you are.
Hello, world.
Zenyatta has 15% increased damage, and he has 5% increased movement speed, and he heals a small amount when dealing damage. If he melees, which is a kick, it knocks them far away, but in the direction you're looking. So if you just look downwards, it's not going to knock them very far, but if you look upwards, it knocks them pretty far. Another thing that Zen gets is that if you crouch, you get a speed boost, and this makes his crouch almost the same speed as his walk. But the important thing is you can do it in the air, so you can do all sorts of jukes by holding crouch and jumping around. Give a little speed boost like that. And this also works while charging up the right click. His ult charges passively, and the speed boost also works during his ult.